Hey guys, it's Graham. What's cracking? Finished another audiobook today. Kind of a short one. It just came out last week, and the timing was, well, obviously intentional. Today it's the 14th. Yesterday was the 13th of July, the first anniversary of Trump getting shot in Butler, Pennsylvania. This book is aptly called Butler. It's by Selena Zito. She's a journalist. Don't hold that against her. She's, over the course of her career, had a lot of proximity to presidential campaigns, including covering Trump through the last couple of cycles. And she was on the stage in Butler, Pennsylvania when he got shot. She was just a few feet away from him. This book is not just a story about the assassination attempt or even necessarily what all led up to it. The focus is a little bit more broad to the region of Butler, which she has long ancestral ties to. It's a region that is full of people who generally don't move away. Like a high percentage of residents there live within 10 miles of where they grew up. People tend to stay put over there. And she talks about that phenomenon and the effect that it has on regional politics and how the electorate, well, we'll say that the electorate hasn't necessarily changed, but their interests in political representation have changed from one party to the other over the course of her life. And why Trump got such a warm response in 2024. And she talks a little bit about the shooter. And like it's kind of a broad picture of that area as well as the 2024 election and how her ties to the region gave her an expectation for how it was going to vote over the course of the now three Trump election cycles, and how the national media got it wrong because they're very bubble-minded. The Washington, D.C. elites, the New York elites, the people who look at the rest of the country as flyover country, and anybody who didn't come up the same way as them and move to these big power centers like they did is somehow not as educated as them. It doesn't know what's good for them and blah, blah, blah. Like having an ear to the ground in politics gave her a greater understanding of how that area was going to vote and why. I think the closing of the book had probably the most to offer because it talked about how institutions have become out of touch with the electorate, and no institution has suffered this effect more than journalism at large, especially the legacy media institutions. And she's been a contributor to them over the course of her career. She's a grandmother, so she's been around the block a few times as far as electoral politics goes. And I appreciated her perspective because she's more of the boots on the ground style of journalist. A lot of the stories that she shared, covering interviews and seeing the behind the scenes stuff about her process, it involved her getting into a car and driving places for hours and having to plan ahead and having press passes ready. Like the logistics of it, this is what actual journalism looks like. It's actually going out and talking to people and finding stuff out and writing it down. So much of what we call journalism is talking heads interviewing each other, or people like me on YouTube who read an article and share their take on it. Like she's one of the writers who's at the point of generation for this information. Like she gets down there and figures it out, writes it down, and sends it out into the ether. She's not reading what somebody else wrote. She's out there writing things that she's seen. And that's the kind of work that journalism by and large needs to be about, and the legacy media institutions really need to get back to that instead of just spending all of their time listening to each other and quote tweeting social media stuff if they ever want to get the trust of the electorate back. But that's going to involve them looking at the world and maybe seeing things that they're not comfortable with and accepting them as reality. I think overall that's a process that we could all benefit from. We do all live in our bubbles. We do all enjoy our echo chambers, even the ones of us that think we don't. This includes me. And if you're if you're more keen to take that kind of self-analysis when you're considering your own political perceptions and biases, I think you won't get blindsided so much by the swing cycle of electoral politics. I was 8 years old when Bill Clinton upset Bush 41. I was 16 when Bush eked out a win against Gore in 2000. I was 24 when Obama came on the scene and just clobbered the McCain operation, 2008. And then I was 32 when Trump pulled off like the least likely victory ever. But then again, there were some people that predicted it, and we all wrote them off as just crackpots or dreamhards, and they had some proximity again to the electorate that the mainstream didn't have, and maybe that's why they saw it coming, or they just got lucky. I don't know. This is a book about, yes, the assassination attempt, but really it's about every place where people, are you freaking serious? People drive like morons. That's what this book is about. Where people just stay close to the ground, stay close to where they're from, and they care a little bit less about Team Red Elephant or Team Blue Donkey, and more about like, how do I keep the place where I'm from strong, and how do I let it endure to the next generation so that it's there for my grandkids the way that it was there for my grandparents, and which side has the best likelihood of providing that. Understanding that is the key to understanding things that we on the outside view as electoral swing states, as it were. It's not that the electorate changes their mind all the time. Like, it's that the parties often change what they're offering. And the ones who are close to those regions, like Selena Zito is to Zito or Vito, Selena, to the Butler County area of Pennsylvania, like she'll have that more accurate take on it, and that'll be true of any other local reporter who's worth their salt and honest about what they're covering. I thought this was a fascinating book. She digs up a couple of other good factlets, like, hey, Trump wasn't the only president to be shot at in that area. But there's a little bit of a reach here. But she digs up an event in 1753 when George Washington was 21 years old, and he was in the now Butler County area of Pennsylvania, and was shot at by an Indian with a rifle in what would become the French and Indian War. And he too was spared. I'm like, okay, cool coincidence. Not exactly the same context or the same circumstances, but I don't know. Maybe if you're a presidential candidate, just triple check the area before you ever go to Butler, Pennsylvania again. Content warning: there's a couple of F-bombs in this one because it's a journalism book. It's instances where she's quoting somebody saying something that actually happened. But it was cool to hear her perspective on this subject at large, and also cool to hear her story as she also survived the shooting there at Butler. She was there on the stage, and she was protected by security as they were largely occupied with getting Trump off the stage and into a secure place. And it was good to have the facts of that preserved in a book form. Man, I remember getting up from my afternoon sleep because I was still on a weird sleep schedule last summer. And I think my wife was at book club or something. And so I woke up, the kids were doing their thing. I ordered pizza for dinner, and then I got on Twitter. And like all caps trending was, how do you miss that? And that was when people started getting major blowback for wishing that he'd been shot openly and online. And there was a whole brouhaha over that. But that was how I found out that somebody had actually taken a shot and like by a quarter of an inch missed killing him on live national television. My parents were 4 when JFK was shot. They were in their early 20s when Reagan was shot. It's just one of those things that like, literally the course of the country hinges on these things. And when you hear about it happening, you'll always remember where you were and what you were doing. And I could hardly blame somebody who was there and saw it happen a few feet away from her, wanting to chronicle it all down and fix the facts in a print book. I listened to the audio. Audio was well done. It's a little bit less than 8 hours. Great book. Highly recommend it. So check out Butler by Selena Zito or Vito. Here's me being crappy and not remembering as I checked it. Anyway, drive safe. See you out there.